This is a really interesting panel that you're just about to hear about. I am a professor in public health when I'm not working on academic administration in the Provost's office. And so I was really delighted to see these projects that are really addressing what we call the social determinants of health, because we know that what determines our health is not just access to healthcare services, but really the conditions in which we live, whether how we work, the kind of housing we have, the kind of access we have to social entitlements. All of those kind of social determinants are extremely important. So in public health, we often deal in aggregate measures of health at a population level, but what also really matters is what is important to people about their health, and how do they value their health, how much control do they have over their bodies and over their health in general. So these presentations are really going to get at the heart of some of those issues. And I was always so really pleased to see that two of them are explicitly using the arts. And I think the arts are really critically important for public health, because people engage emotionally, and they engage with other people, they laugh, they cry with the arts, but it really gets at what's important to them and their values. And that's obviously very critical for health. So we have three teams today who are going to be presenting, and I hope the presenters all know that they have 10 minutes, and I'm going to be strict with my 1-minute sign. And then we'll take the questions at the end. So I'd like to ask the first group to come up. This is a group working, these are USAID scholars at AUB, and the team members are Ali Sadadin, Aya Naufal, Janal Youssef, Rayan Kilani, Roa Ali, and Maher Mamah. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Is that correct? And the title of their presentation is Drug Abuse Prevention, a theater-based peer education program in El Bissan UNRWA School. So over to you. Thank you.
My name is Rayan Kilani, and today we will be presenting our community service project along with my teammates Roa Ali and Janal Youssef. Our project is mainly about drug abuse prevention, which will be a theater-based peer education program in Bissan School. Throughout the presentation, we'll be focusing on refugee core stressors and their impacts worldwide. Then we'll be directing our focus to the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, especially the ones who are living in Ain al-Hilwi camp. Then we'll be sharing with you the assessments and the key findings that we looked for and that led us to think of the proposed intervention. As of May 2022, 100 million were forced to flee their homes in search for better countries because of conflict and natural disasters. 27.1 million of those are refugees who were also forced to flee their homes in search for better living conditions. And it is good to note that all of these displaced people are living in low and middle income countries now. Refugees, including children, have been facing traumatic events back home and during displacement. They are also suffering from stresses and isolation trying to settle in their new country. These core stressors have been affecting refugees' mental health and their emotional well-being. And due to that, we now have an increased risk of behavioral issues such as gang involvement and drug abuse. Especially in Lebanon, Lebanon has the most refugees per capita in the world, as we can see in this chart. And Lebanon has been hosting two big refugees populations that are Syrian and Palestinian refugees communities. Speaking about Palestinian refugees, there are over 470,000 registered Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, according to UNHCR. And around 45% of whom are living in 12 camps in Lebanon, scattered across the country. These camps are unfortunately overcrowded, full of dilapidated buildings that lack basic infrastructure such as water and sanitation. Palestinian refugees are also suffering from high unemployment rate due to the labor law restrictions, as well as high poverty rates, as a recent study showed that 93% of the Palestinian refugees are under the poverty lines. In addition to that, these camps have inadequate healthcare services, high school dropout rates, and unfortunately there is no military presence, which led the environment in the camp to be more at risk of illegal actions.
On top of these refugee-specific hardships, we have the hardships that everyone living in Lebanon face, such as the political and critical crises and the effects of COVID-19 pandemic and the Beirut explosion. So all of these hardships compound led to the increase of the rate of refugee youth to refuge to drugs. And the recent study showed that heroin and cocaine are two easily accessible drugs in 3 of the camps in Lebanon, including Ain al-Hilwa refugee camp. Moreover, one of us already lived there, Jana, and 3 of us studied in its high school, so we are already aware of the problem. So before digging more into the problem, let's know more about Ain al-Hilwa refugee camp. Ain al-Hilwa refugee camp is the largest refugee camp in Lebanon, with around 80,000 people living in an area of 1.5 kilometers squared in Saida. It has 2 UNRWA health centers and 8 UNRWA schools, with only 1 high school. This is the high school that 3 of us went to, and it has around 1,200 students. So to confirm our speculations that drug is really a prominent problem in Ain al-Hilwa, and to know our target age group, we did the following assessments. First, we interviewed teachers of the school, and then we did surveys with the students, mostly from Bissan school, and then we did an interview with a psychiatrist from AUBMC, and after that we did focus group with mothers of teenagers, and finally we did interviews with local NGOs such as Beit Atfal al-Sumud and Nabah.
Our field work faced several obstacles given that drug addiction is a highly sensitive topic. So in fact, the UNRWA principal in Saida advised us to change the topic, and he did not give us access to our target population, who are high school students from Bissan. And there are limited data regarding the topic online. Therefore, we had to do some extra work and to survey more local stakeholders in order to get some information about the topic. Nevertheless, our field work showed that drugs, particularly cocaine, cannabis, heroin, captagon, as well as a drug locally referred to as farawla, were easily accessible and available inside Ain al-Hilwa camp. And in addition to the tough economic conditions, lack of parental supervision, and peer pressure, refugee youth were engaged in drug dealing. And the results of our focus group with mothers from the camp, as well as the surveys, we knew that despite the efforts and the anti-drug campaigns organized inside Ain al-Hilwa, influential group connected to drug trafficking still continued to involve youth in drug dealing and made the situation even more difficult to control. So if we want to present some of our survey key findings, we can see that the majority of high school students from Ain al-Hilwa are aware that drug addiction is a serious issue that is highly prevalent inside Ain al-Hilwa, with 32% of them know someone from the camp who uses drugs, and about 84% of them believe that drugs are easily accessible and available inside the camp. So, as Ru'a have already mentioned, we can relate to the topic since I live there and my team members live nearby, and we personally know some people from the camp who use drugs. So we teamed up to design a community service project in which we address the issue of drug use among youth inside the Ain al-Hilwa. Our community service project aims to reduce the rates of drug addiction among youth through a theater-based peer education, TBPE, which utilizes theater as an educational tool whereby peers perform a play to other peers, basing that on the natural tendency of peers to learn from one another. Therefore, we are now working in collaboration with a drama therapist to produce a live theater or an interactive play that encourages debate, discussion, and engagement, whereby we can promote community awareness and the risks, and base an understanding about the risks associated with drug addiction, and we can encourage behavior that would protect teenagers from drug abuse. So we are now working on developing scenes that are relatable to the lives of the audience, portraying mainly the roles that parents, teenagers, and youth themselves can play in addressing the issue of drug addiction among youth inside the Ain al-Hilwi camp. So this was our community service project, and thank you for
So thank you so much. That was a really interesting and lively presentation, really well, and I didn't even need to remind you about the time, so you did it perfectly timed, so that was great. Thank you so much. So next up is a really interesting topic of period poverty. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means for women and girls who can't afford to buy the necessary equipment or supplies that they need. It's a real problem because most of that is imported or has gone up in price. And so the topic of today's presentation is period poverty, banana fiber pads for menstrual hygiene in Saida. And the team members are all on the MEPI graduate, the TLG, Tomorrow Leaders graduate program. And they're Arend El-Houri, Khomsi, Rima Wahbi, and Layan Musa.
Hello everyone, it's Rima, Layan and Rand, and we would like to present to you our initiative entitled Seeds, which is an initiative designed to fight against period poverty in Lebanon. So let's start by defining period poverty. As Dr. Jocelyn said, it's characterized by the lack of access to sanitary products felt by women and girls all around the world. It can also describe the extra financial burden that women and girls feel when having to purchase these products on a monthly basis. So looking at the problem from a global perspective, period poverty is actually a global concern because it affects over 500 million young girls and women all around the world. Apart from poverty being a major contributor to this issue, the way that this topic is stigmatized also leads to girls being miseducated on this topic and not knowing how to handle their periods monthly. So this overall leads to a lower quality of life. Women's careers, financial stability, and mental health can be largely affected, as well as their day-to-day life. So on a national level, we actually found out that 66% of girls and women in Lebanon struggle with access to these sanitary products. And this is due to two main reasons. First, we have the economic crisis and inflation, which has been occurring since 2019, making women exceptionally vulnerable to this economic turmoil. The second reason is that women in Lebanon were marginalized following this economic crisis, and these products were not subsidized like other products. And so just to give you contextualize the problem in numbers, there has been a 2,000% increase in the price of pads. So before 1,500 LBP used to equate $1, now it's 100,000 LBP is equating $1. So Lebanese statistics estimate that there is a 90% decrease in the purchasing power of Lebanese salaries. So just to give you a couple of examples of the most famous brands, so these used to cost around 4,000 to 8,000 LBP. Now the cheapest alternative costs 95,000 LBP, and that equates around 18% of the Lebanese minimum wage.
So we had several opportunities to initiate our project, but we chose to be localized in Old Saida, South Lebanon. Why Old Saida? Old Saida is known as both the capital of the south and a peri-urban area with high poverty rate. Adding to this, I would like to mention that the municipality of Saida showed high interest in supporting initiatives for women empowerment. Adding to that, they have many established contacts with local NGOs that could help us initiating our project. And you will find out in a couple of seconds why the most important point here is that Old Saida is located near various banana lands in the coastal area and the south of Lebanon. Now, we have interviewed the municipality of Saida and other local NGOs such as the DPNA, the ACTED, UN Women, and the Asfiri Institute at the American University of Beirut, and they showed high interest in supporting our project, as period poverty is nowadays posing health and psychological concerns. And we knew from there that One of these local NGOs called Acted started an initiative by producing local Lebanese pads, but they relied on cotton and cloth as their raw materials. So from our field visit to Old Saida, we conducted an interview with 20 women and girls residing in the city. 9 of these 20 women stated that they are using their pads for longer durations, and 4 out of them skipped their school or work in order to control their period, as they are not able to afford the menstrual products. So these are some pictures from the meetings we had with Acted Association, Saida's municipality, and from our field visit to Saida.
Okay, so based on the problematic defined, here is our intervention seeds, at which we aim at producing menstrual pads from natural banana fibers. So our mission is to relieve period poverty and empower women by providing our consumers with local, inexpensive, and biodegradable menstrual pads, our target community with dignified job opportunities, and our stakeholders with value. Our vision is to endeavor to be the local leaders of menstrual pads production in Lebanon, thus serving our bigger community. So who we are a devoted trio towards women empowerment, and our expertise in chemical engineering, finance, and business analytics actually qualify us to start up the SEEDS project. So SEEDS logo reflects our mission and vision, at which we strengthen and embrace women during their periods and empower, dignify, and support women as workforces. So basically, our product is local, biodegradable, and sustainable, and it is cheap compared to imported pads, and most importantly, it is from women to women.
So, designed from women to women in order to relieve period poverty in Lebanon, SEEDS project will be manufactured using the banana stems as raw material. Why banana stems? Lebanon is well known for banana cultivation in the coastal and the south area. Adding to this, banana stems contain is a strong fiber and have a high strong moisture absorption quality. In addition to that, it is a biodegradable fiber. Adding to that, one banana stem, whenever it is chemically treated, it can produce approximately 3,000 pads. And the most important point, that banana trees fructify once, so after the harvest season, those trees are cut for disposal, taken by our team in order to treat them and recycle them to the production of the SEEDS pads. As for the manufacturing process, the raw material, which are the banana stems, are cut into layers. The natural fibers will be extracted, washed, dried, shredded into small pieces. With a chemical reaction will be transformed into a cotton-like material, and with this obtained layer with other the layers of the pad will be embossed, sterilized, and finally dispatched.
Okay, so this is our facility. Our facility will be located in Old Saida with a working area of 200 meters squared. This area will be divided into 4 units. First, the raw materials unit, at which banana stems will be stored and dried. Secondly, we have the manufacturing unit, which requires and contains all the machinery needed for production. Third, we have the chemical reaction unit, at which the banana natural fibers will be chemically treated. And finally, we have the dispatching unit and the administration. So the workflow will be as follows. First, we will buy 7 tons of banana stems, and with the fact that each banana stems weighs on average of 20 kilograms, we will have a total of 350 banana stems. And with the fact that each stem produces 3,000 pads, we will end up with a total of 1,050,000 pads produced in the first 350 working days of the project at a rate of 3,000 pads per day, which is an annual average. So for the budgeting, to start up SEEDS project, we need nearly $60,000 of initial investment in order to start up our project with a working rate, with a working flow of producing 3,000 pads per day. And actually, we were able to to reach an affordable price with a profit margin of 20% of 40,000 Lebanese lira, which is 58% cheaper than the available pads in the Lebanese market. And for marketing, we will reside on launching social media campaigns. We will contact influencers. We will use the street art in order to promote our proud made in Lebanon menstrual pads for free. And finally, we will distribute free pads in the supermarket. And here are some of our promotional designs for marketing purposes.
So to end, we basically want to tell you our 4 main contributions or goals from this project. First, it is to ensure the health and wellness of all the women who are facing this issue, particularly in Lebanon. Second, it's to relieve period poverty by providing a local, inexpensive menstrual pad. Third, it's to open up job vacancies for the women who need to step into the workplace, especially in low-income communities. And fourth, it's to integrate them as productive workforces that can contribute to the country's economy. Thank you.
Wow, that was incredibly interesting and creative, and as you say, has really multifaceted potential and a really thorough job. And you brought in your scientific and engineering expertise, and one of you maybe has a business. It sounds like a business background as well. So great, really interesting, sustainable solution, and really terrific. I wanted to also congratulate you on your color coding. The presentation matched their outfits, which was great. So if anyone has seen the film Kafir Naoum, that film very much addresses period poverty, right? And there's also, if you haven't seen it, there's a wonderful little short film by Marsa, the Sexual Health Center, that deals with a stigma for young girls buying period products in local stores in Lebanon. It's worth seeing if you haven't seen it. So terrific, thank you very much, and you also did a really good job of keeping to time. So last but not least, we have another arts-based project. So this one is called Decontaminating Chekka, an art-based campaign for asbestos justice. And this is a team of USAID scholars presenting. We have Bashar Shadeh, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Dani Shaheen, Daniel Saad, Rebecca Aboud, and Thierry, is it? Darer?
Hello everyone, and welcome to Decontaminating Chekka. I'm Bashar, and I'll be presenting our project with my teammates, Dani, Rebecca, Daniel, and Terry. We are motivated by the death of our neighbor in Chekka, who unfortunately died due to mesothelioma that is caused due to the exposure to asbestos. So what is asbestos? So asbestos is the market name given to naturally occurring mineral fibers that are used in the construction. They were known as the plastic of the 20th century. Actually, my grandpa used to have a table made of asbestos. Since the 1900s, more than 200 million of tons of asbestos have been produced. Now we will move to talk about the dangers of asbestos with my teammate, Dani.
All right, so as Bashar said, hundreds of millions of tons of asbestos have been produced, but after researchers found that asbestos or being exposed to asbestos has drastic and negative effects on the health of humans, the production of asbestos decreased drastically. Now, some of the bad effects that asbestos has on humans is that it causes mesothelioma, lung cancer, asthma, and many other types of cancer as well. And the even scarier thing is that the latency period between being exposed to asbestos and the emergence or the development of the disease is between 20 to 50 years. And this is in fact a very serious issue, as the World Health Organization has revealed that hundreds of millions of people are being exposed to asbestos annually, and in fact hundreds of thousands of people die because of it. Now, in the next slide, we can see that many countries have banned asbestos. Some notable are the US, Canada, even most of Europe. But some other countries have been late to prohibit the use of asbestos due to many reasons, some of which are the low cost of asbestos, the ease of access to asbestos, and the fact that the asbestos industry downplay the bad effects of asbestos. Now, in order to learn more about asbestos in Lebanon, I'm going to pass the microphone to Rebecca.
Now, let's talk about Lebanon. In 1950, the biggest factory that made construction materials out of asbestos was built by a Swiss company called Eternit. In 1996, after people started to talk about its danger, the government started to take some regulations, and it wasn't until 1998 that the government fully banned the asbestos, but it wasn't fully banned. Only 5 out of 6 types were banned, and there were no regulations for the remaining asbestos. The most important aspect of the timeline was in 2002, the Eternit factory was shut down due to high pressure and bankruptcy. In 2005, the first research was conducted on mesothelioma. And in 2015, another research was conducted that shows that the cases of mesothelioma had doubled in comparison to the other research. And finally, in 2020, mesothelioma was in the headlines after the Beirut explosion that exposed asbestos all over. Now moving on to Bashar.
Thanks, Rebecca. Those research were done in Chekka, where I came from. So Chekka is a coastal town in North Lebanon with 15,000 in population. It's been heavily industrialized since 1929. Now, zooming in to Chekka, we can see how it's encountered with the factories, starting with in the south of Chekka with the Holcim factory, cement factory. Behind it, we have the closed asbestos factory with its storage estimated at hundreds of tons. Moving to the north of Chekka with the Cementerie Nationale, another cement factory. And to the higher up, we have the result of the quarries that have been working throughout the years since 1929. All of this is around the residential areas. So why exactly Chekka? That's because of the access to the sea, as we can see, the excellent soil quality of Chekka, the political protection of these different factories, and the governmental corruption that we all know about in Lebanon. All of this left behind the legacy of social, governmental, and economical and environmental devastation. Now, I'll leave the floor to my colleague, Danny.
So now let's go back to the Eternit factory that you mentioned before. So first, the Eternit factory is the biggest factory in Lebanon that produced asbestos. It was asbestos products. So it was established in 1950 in Chekka, and it was built very close to houses. And finally, it went bankrupt and it closed in 2002 with hundreds of workers dismissed without any compensation or health assurance or coverage. So after the factory was shut down, 100 tons of asbestos pipes were left behind in Chekka, as we can see in the picture. So, and multiple links that without any official government health statistics shows how much. Therefore, we relied on our assessment on media headlines and testimonials from people we know from Chekka whose families were affected. And now I will leave the floor to my teammate, Tari.
Adding to what Danielle has said, homes in Chekka have been constructed using asbestos materials like the rest of the country, as you can see in the picture. Now let's talk about what has been done. Basically, there have been 3 main actors that have addressed this issue. The municipality of Chekka tried to interfere and tried to solve this problem and launched a petition several years ago to demand the removal of the asbestos left, but eventually it failed. On the other hand, some NGOs have presented advocacy to this issue. And finally, a few research have been conducted to look up for the effects and the severe consequences of the asbestos. Now move on to the intervention with Dan.
So after seeing the complexity of this issue and the limited resources that we have, there's nothing much that we can do other than to try to send the message to the authorities and the international community, in addition to some activities that would actually protect the residents of Chekka. So first we plan on encapsulating the roofs, the asbestos roofs that have been used in houses in Chekka, using specialized paint in order to protect the residents of Chekka. We then plan to do an art-based advocacy after being inspired by the climate activists and graffiti artists such as Banksy. And finally, we hope to raise some awareness in the community of Chekka in order for the residents of Chekka to know how to safely handle asbestos. Thank you.
Really terrific. I had no idea about that. Very, very, very interesting. And your visuals were absolutely wonderful also. It was a really beautiful presentation to watch. So well done. Really interesting. Okay, quick poll. How many people learned something new in this panel? Okay, great. How many people learned about communities in Lebanon that they didn't know much about before? Okay, well, that sounds great. So now it's open for your questions, and I think I'm going to invite I think it's one person per team, is that right? Yes. Saida, who's going to come up and join us here, and so we have a bit of a discussion. So if you could just, I think you've nominated before, who's going to join us? Questions that we can open the floor. Anyone got questions? Are there mics that go around that we can share? I mean, I have a question for each of the teams, but only if there aren't other questions, which is how you got the idea to do what you did. But let's listen to other questions. The floor, no? You must have questions. Okay, well, I'll let them hand going up, no? Okay, well, I'll let you warm up with answering that question. How you, just briefly, if you could say how you got the idea. Oh, you have a mic, sorry. No, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so for us, for period poverty, it was out of like personal struggle, because we three are women and we kind of like bonded over the issue. It was like something that we were suffering from, and we consider ourselves, let's say, middle class, so we were wondering how lower class women in Lebanon were handling the issue. So we started exploring it more, and we started, like, when we started talking to women, we realized like the extent to like which this was a huge problem, which we were kind of aware of, but we did not know exactly like the extent of the non-hygienic procedures or methods that women were resorting to avoid buying these products. So yeah.
And just a quick follow-up question on that. Did you find any literature on the topic in Lebanon? Not much, right?
I think there were 2 scholarly papers that we read, but they were not very up to date. So the newest one was like 2020. And so the rest of it was statistics done by local NGOs, which were more recent. And we also relied on our own like estimates as to like what the situation was and how it is now.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So for our topic about drug addiction, I personally live inside Ain al-Hilwi camp, which suffers from multiple issues, one of which is drug abuse. Like in the previous years, this issue have been very prevalent, and it's disastrous. But with the compounding crisis from 2019, we wondered, like, how are people living now? How are they dealing with their mental health issues, with the economic situation? And we have seen that drug addiction have increased over the years, but we did not have like enough data about Ain al-Hilwi. So we decided to tackle the problem.
Great. So both of you had a personal experience. Go ahead.
Actually, for me, it was also a personal experience. It started with my mother having asthma. We dived deeper into the problem, and one of the causes of the exposure to asbestos is asthma. Other than that, we have we talked about the industries in Chekka of cement factories and all of that. Diving deeper, we have seen that people don't care about that stock left of asbestos and all the danger of asbestos being left behind in Chekka and living with it normally. However, we've seen some activities against the cement factories, some research against the cement factories, but nobody actually talks about the asbestos in terms of research or activities. So that's why we try to focus on asbestos to raise awareness about the danger of it on residents in Chekka.
Great.
Okay, so I have a question for the group that's targeting period poverty. My question is about how are you willing to convince people actually and women to buy your product while it's actually made from organic material like the banana, and maybe it might have like an allergic reaction or something. And moreover, how are you planning to fund your project?
Yeah, so for the funding question, there are local NGOs who fund this. If you like provide the correct documents and the budget, there are local NGOs who are actually funding this. Like ACTED was funded, I think, by the Japanese or the German embassy. And for the actual pad, there is research on why banana is a non-allergic fiber. And of course, there are chemicals that are actually patented right now, which are being used to transform the fibers into a cotton-like non-allergic material. So it's like a special chemical compound that is not publicly known. So this is what we are currently working on and like communicating to know exactly how the process is. But I think like the main like incentive for women will be that it is definitely better than the cotton alternative, which is being used at home, or like using the same pad longer, or these non-hygienic procedures. If you give them an inexpensive alternative, and if you support it with like research and evidence that it's non-allergic, then they will use it, I suppose.
Others? Yes, go ahead, please.
Hello everyone, I'm Safia Salar from ELC Scholars. I have a question about period poverty as well. So your project is like cutting the banana trees, right? So don't you think that it's damaging the nature? And what is your solution for this?
Yeah, so like we said, a banana tree will only fructify once. So once it like fructifies and gives you the bananas, the farmers will then cut it in half for it to feed another tree, or they will throw it away because then it will die. So basically what we're taking is the waste of banana, not the actual banana tree that is about to fructify. The waste usually is like it's thrown aside, it's reabsorbed. So there's no damage really if you acquire it and make this like biodegradable product instead.
Okay, thank you.
Others, other hands? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, okay. Thank you so much. The project is so interesting, actually. I just have a question. Since you mentioned...
Poverty one, right?
Yeah,
just
yeah,
so okay.
Yeah. So basically you mentioned that you will be using organic products. The banana is a great example. So my question is like, you know, our organic products are so hard to have access to, you know. So basically, like, what would be the future for this if out of a sudden organic products are no longer available? It's like, what would be the alternative? How would you consider this sustainable, I would say maybe business?
I mean, and it relies a lot on like these products being available. So there is banana and bamboo, which are valid both to like make these pads. We chose banana because it's very abundant in Lebanon, and we're like planning to do it in Lebanon. So if you like look at the coast of Lebanon, it's full of like banana plantation, and it's been like this since like forever. So it's a very it's a very like abundant fruit if you want. So in other countries, maybe if they have excess bamboo, then they can use it. If they can't plant bananas, there are actually people in Lebanon working on similar projects who import banana from India, and it's also at low cost. Like it's very inexpensive. So yeah, you can import banana from other countries.
Their project is grounded in research. I can see that. Other questions? So I have another question for the group. So and maybe this is also for this wider, these wider projects. So you have a plan, you've developed a plan, and you've costed it, and you have almost an implementation plan. What's next for these projects? Are you personally vested in making sure that these things happen, or does it stop here, or any of you, or all of you?
Yeah, so basically our goal is to raise awareness about the danger of asbestos, as we talked about. So we said that we don't have the resources to permanently remove all the asbestos, but we want to we want the attention of the world, of global authorities, to take actions to remove that asbestos. We know that, for example, the local authorities cannot help anymore with the removing the danger. Our goal is to attract their attention and to remove that asbestos, because it's a danger for people in North Lebanon.
For our project, we are now working with Bissan High School, and we are planning to choose or select like some high school students to play some roles in our play, so that they can the audience can relate more to them. As we said, it's a peer-to-peer approach. So we are now working on selecting the students. We have already started with the play. We have developed the scene, but we have to review them with the drama therapist. And I think in the next month, we will start with the implementation.
Great.
For us, mainly now we're in contact with suppliers of the machines that you need in order to produce at least one prototype of this pad. Also for the chemicals, because they are patented, so they require a more serious conversation. But for now, it's the suppliers of the machines that are actually used to produce this out of banana, because you can't do it manually. So, yes.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
I have a question for the drug prevention project. So you talked about theater therapy, right? And the solution. So I want to know how the process would go. Like, you would reach out to them, or you would propose the idea and wait for them to register and therapy sessions or plays?
Okay. So it's gonna be like a play performed on a stage with first secondary students. We're targeting first secondary students, and they will all be part of this. So all of them will go to a theater where the play will have some scenes which relate to their lives, like how they live, I don't know, how the drug dealing is done inside the camp. The process, it shows the process, how the conditions they are suffering from in the camp, their thoughts, their objectives. This is how it works. Kind of.
Can the audience engage in the play? Is that the plan?
Yes,
so
the play, we were thinking maybe having some scenes where we stop and we ask the audience, what would you do if you were in the shoes of the actor? What would you do in place of this character if you were put in the same situation? And after the play is performed, we will have a discussion with them, asking about how so how the play have impacted them, how did it change some of their misconceptions that they have, or have it provided them with alternative solutions or some or can they take part in helping other people to be pulled out of this situation?
So just to say that community-based theater is a really powerful tool, the kind of project that you're describing, and it actually would be good for addressing any of these sensitive issues that you've addressed. Because basically the idea is, as you said, is that the play should reflect people's lives, and they should feel that they have a stake in it. and it captures a reality, which then opens up discussion around some of these sensitive issues that are hard to discuss. So period poverty, for example, I mean, I know because I'm in public health, this is something 5-10 years ago nobody talked about. And it happened, but nobody documented, nobody did research on it. It was just under the radar. And I think all of you have really been courageous in that you've addressed some really sensitive issues that are, and this kind of arts-based approaches can be very effective to addressing those kind of very sensitive issues where there's a lot of stigma. Any other questions? Because I also have another question. I've got too many questions maybe, but the group, the audience, anyone else got another question? Okay, so the last question I wanted to ask you is, so a lot of the work that you're describing could have been done by NGOs, but you're university students. You're university students who are having this experience and doing it. What's different at doing this work as a university student? What do you bring that maybe others might not bring?
Okay, so first of all, it's about me giving back to the community that we came from. It's not about that we moved here to Beirut and the university and just we would ignore where we came from. Secondly, it's defending our people and what they're facing, all that political corruption and all that coverage for the corruption in the factories. And we want to protect them. What we could have done different is that, very simply, that we are from there, we are from the people, we know who has the cancer, who has been affected very well, we know who lives very close to these factories, we know the structure of these factories, and we know where to defend the people in which points exactly, because it wouldn't be seen as a political movement. It's just a movement to raise awareness about the danger on the health of people in Chekka.
Okay, so just to follow up on this, it sounds to me what you're saying is that as a university student, you're bringing a bit of independence of perspective and also analytical frameworks. So you come from there, but you're now, you've studied, you've taken lots of courses. You now come with a new analysis, maybe, to the problems that are being faced. That's what I'm hearing from you. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, where I was before coming to university, I didn't see the problem that deeply, because it was like any resident there. I would ignore the fact that there was asbestos, and I would just attack the cement factories because they were operating and waiting for some compensations to be paid for me due to my activities against them, to just shut my mouth. However, nobody used to talk about that asbestos, that silent killer there, because simply the factory is shut down. So we see it from different perspectives now.
Great, okay, thanks. Go ahead.
So for us, I believe that local NGOs have been working so much on the issue of drug addiction in Ain al-Hilwi because it's a hot topic there. But I believe that they use the simple lecturing type of intervention, which may not appeal to a young audience. So I think as university students, we are now more aware of alternatives, of different approaches that we can use in order to attract the audience, which is different from what is common or conventional.
You're getting lots of likes. Go ahead.
I think for us it was that the work was more agile, because we were experienced and we had chemical engineering background and business background, so we were able to move through the steps of the project fairly quickly. And I feel us being students and not an NGO kind of breaks that barrier between NGOs receive a proposal and then they read it, but they have no actual contact or communication with the people. It's just like a project that they either take or don't. But we were very we put extra emphasis on talking to people and listening to what they had to say. That informed our project a lot. We got most of our insights and ideas from people we talked to and not research or literature. So I think this was very good that we were students, we were able to move around quickly and talk to people fairly very agile. So, and third is like our main goal was basically to just be able to talk about this so that it's not a taboo topic, especially here in university, because like we are the youth and we will like raise the generations to come. So it was sort of like a passion project for us to just be able to talk about this here. Yeah.
That's great. Now, I think we've reached the end of our time, but I think you'll agree with me that these were 3 fantastic projects. So let's give them a round of applause.